If every country on Earth is drowning in debt, who exactly are we paying back? Are we in debt to aliens? To some secret cabal? The answer is far more interesting than you think. Right now, as you're watching this video, the global debt clock is ticking. Every second, the world adds another $1 million to its collective debt. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just who holds the debt, but why this system exists in the first place, whether we should be worried about it, and what history teaches us about what happens when debt spirals out of control. Let's dive in. As of 2024, global debt has reached over $300 trillion. That's $300 trillion. To put that in perspective, if you spent $1 million every single day, it would take you over 820,000 years to spend that much money. That's longer than humans have existed as a species. Here's another way to think about it. If you stack 300 trillion $1 bills, the stack would reach from Earth to the Sun and back 5 times. Now let's break this down by country, because it gets even more mind-boggling. The United States alone owes more than $35 trillion. That's about $104,000 for every single American citizen, including babies born yesterday. Japan's debt is over 250% of its entire economic output, meaning they owe 2.5 times everything their country produces in a year. Even countries we think of as wealthy and fiscally responsible are deep in debt. Germany owes over $2.8 trillion. France? Over $3 trillion. The United Kingdom? Nearly $3 trillion. Italy's debt is at 135% of their GDP. Developing nations? They're in debt too. In fact, according to the World Bank, low and middle-income countries owe over $9 trillion. Some African nations spend more on debt payments than they do on healthcare and education combined. So here's the paradox that keeps economists up at night. If everyone owes money, who's getting paid? The question seems absurd at first. It's like if everyone in a room borrowed money from everyone else eventually, shouldn't it all cancel out? Wouldn't the debts just disappear? But here's the thing. Debt doesn't work that way. And to understand why, we need to travel back in time, way back. Debt is as old as civilization itself. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 3,500 BCE, the Sumerians invented one of the first writing systems, and guess what they used it for? Recording debts. Clay tablets have been found detailing loans of grain, silver, and livestock. But here's what's fascinating. Back then, kings would occasionally declare debt jubilees. They'd simply cancel all debts to prevent society from collapsing. Imagine that happening today. Fast forward to medieval Europe. Kingdoms would borrow from wealthy merchant families, the Medici in Florence, the Fuggers in Germany, to fund wars and lavish courts. If a king couldn't pay back, well, sometimes the banker ended up dead or exiled. Lending to royalty was a dangerous business. Then came the real game changer: government bonds. In 1693, the British government created something revolutionary. They issued bonds to the public to fund a war against France. Instead of borrowing from one wealthy family, they borrowed from thousands of citizens, and they promised to pay them back with interest. This was the birth of public debt as we know it, and it changed everything. Countries realized they could fund massive projects, roads, bridges, schools, and yes, wars, by borrowing from their own people and from foreign investors. The debt wasn't money owed to some external alien force, it was money owed to us. So let's answer the big question. Who do countries owe money to? There are 4 main groups. Number 1, their own citizens. The biggest creditor of most countries is their own people. When the US government issues treasury bonds, who buys them? American citizens, pension funds, insurance companies, and regular people saving for retirement. In fact, about 25% of US debt is held by American individuals and institutions. When Japan borrows money, over 90% of their debt is held by Japanese citizens and banks. So when politicians say, we owe this money to ourselves, they're partially right. Number 2, foreign governments. Countries also lend money to each other. Foreign governments hold about 30% of US debt. The biggest foreign holders? Japan holds over $1 trillion. China holds around $800 billion. And the United Kingdom holds over $700 billion. Why would countries lend to each other? It's actually strategic. By holding US Treasury bonds, countries keep their own currencies weaker relative to the dollar, making their exports cheaper and more competitive. Number 3, central banks. This is where it gets wild. Central banks like the Federal Reserve in the US or the European Central Bank actually create money and buy government debt. After the 2008 financial crisis and during the COVID pandemic, central banks went on massive buying sprees. The Federal Reserve now holds over $5 trillion in U.S. government debt. Wait, so the government owes money to itself? Essentially, yes. The government borrows from the central bank, which creates the money to lend. It's like writing yourself an IOU. Number 4. Private banks and investors. Finally, private banks, hedge funds, mutual funds, and wealthy investors around the world hold government bonds. These are considered some of the safest investments on the planet. So when we ask who do we owe, the answer is mostly ourselves, our own institutions, other countries, and investors looking for safe returns. Now, here's where people get confused. They think government debt works like credit card debt. Like eventually, someone has to pay it all back or the repo man shows up. But sovereign debt, debt held by countries, works completely differently. First, countries don't die. You and I have a limited lifespan. We need to pay off our mortgage before we retire. But countries? They theoretically last forever. They can keep rolling over debt indefinitely. Japan has been carrying massive debt since the 1990 seconds. Has it collapsed? No, because creditors believe Japan will keep existing and keep making interest payments. Second, countries can print money. If you owe money and can't pay, you're in trouble. But if you're the US government and you owe dollars, you can literally print more dollars. Now, this isn't consequence-free. Printing too much money causes inflation, but it means the government can never truly run out of money in its own currency. Countries that borrow in foreign currencies, like many developing nations, don't have this luxury. That's why debt crises hit them harder. Third, debt fuels growth. Here's the paradox. Debt can actually be good. When a government borrows to build infrastructure, educate its population, or invest in technology, that debt can pay for itself through economic growth. Think about it. If you borrow money to go to college and your degree helps you earn more, that debt was worth it. Same principle for countries. The problem isn't debt itself, it's what you do with the borrowed money. So after all this, should we be concerned about global debt levels? The answer is, it's complicated. The optimistic view. Interest rates have been historically low for years, making debt cheap to service. As long as economic growth outpaces the interest payments, debt is manageable. Many economists argue we should focus on debt sustainability, not debt elimination. Plus, remember, one person's debt is another person's asset. Those government bonds represent retirement savings, pension funds, and investment portfolios. Eliminating all debt would mean eliminating all those assets too. The pessimistic view. But there are real risks. If interest rates rise sharply, servicing debt becomes much more expensive. Countries might have to cut spending on healthcare, education, and infrastructure just to make interest payments. There's also the risk of a debt spiral where countries borrow just to pay interest on existing debt, never actually investing in growth. This has trapped several nations in cycles of austerity and stagnation. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Much of the debt explosion came from bailing out banks in 2008 and funding pandemic relief. We socialized the losses and privatized the gains. The question isn't just about the amount of debt, it's about who benefits from it and who bears the burden. The historical lesson. History shows us that unsustainable debt always meets the same fate: restructuring, default, or inflation. Rome debased its currency. Weimar Germany printed itself into hyperinflation. Argentina has defaulted multiple times. The difference today? The whole world is interconnected. A crisis in one major economy ripples everywhere. So, if every country is in debt, who do we owe? We owe ourselves, our citizens, our institutions, our future. We owe other countries who've invested in our bonds. We owe private investors seeking safe returns. And in some strange, circular way, we owe the central banks that create money to lend to governments. The real question isn't who we owe, it's whether the debt is being used wisely. Is it building a better future, or just papering over present problems? Debt is a tool. Like any tool, it can build or destroy depending on how it's used. The ancient Mesopotamians understood this when they declared debt jubilees. The medieval kings learned it when they bankrupted kingdoms for vanity wars. And we're still learning it today. The next time someone panics about national debt, remember, it's not about the number. It's about what we're building with borrowed time and borrowed money. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden history of money and finance. Drop a comment below. Do you think global debt levels are sustainable? Or are we heading for a reckoning? Thanks for watching, Financial Ancientist. Until next time, stay curious about the money that moves the world.